Hola, muy buenos días y bienvenidos a esta transmisión vía streaming de la sexta plataforma regional para la reducción del riesgo de desastres en las Américas. A continuación podrán disfrutar y podrán seguir en vivo la sesión paralela número 7, implementación del marco de acción de Sendai a nivel nacional, planes nacionales y marcos legislativos. Esta sesión está coordinada y auspiciada por CEPREDENAC y la Unidad Nacional para la Gestión del Riesgo de Desastres. En esta sesión se presentará la iniciativa de gobiernos y de instituciones intergubernamentales para la articulación de los planes, políticas y marcos legislativos con las prioridades del marco de acción de Sendai. Los dejamos entonces con la sesión número 7.
Good morning. We welcome you to the 7th parallel plenary named Implementation of a Sendai Framework at a national level, national plans and legislative frameworks. In the objectives, we want to disseminate and analyze the advances of the Americas countries in the update and implementation of their policies, national plans for disaster risk reduction, harmonization and implementation of Sendai Framework for the DR. We're going to have Jessica Solano, the technical manager of the Coordination Center for the Prevention of Disasters in Central America and Dominican Republic. Our panelists will be Belda Joseph, director of the National Organization for Emergency Management in St. Lucia. We also have Carlos Valdez, General Director of the National Center for Prevention of Disasters in Mexico, Ivan Rubiano, Subdirector of Risk Reduction of a National Unit for Disaster Risk Reduction of Colombia, Sergio Garcia, Executive Secretary of the National Coordinator for Risk Reduction of Disasters in Guatemala. Last, Otto Mazariegos, a Treasurer of the Board of Directors of the Network of Latin America of People with Disability. A round of applause, please, for our panelists. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of the National Unit of Disaster Risk Management of Colombia, as organizers of this very important session, we are going to know the advances in the Sendai framework, national plans and legislative frameworks, and therefore we want to welcome you. We have today specialists and professionals of different subregions. We have Mexico, we have Central America, through the participation of Costa Rica, we have Argentina, Colombia, and a very important institution that has stand out for their contributions because of the incorporation of inclusive approach. Please be welcome, everyone. This session has as the objective to disseminate and analyze the advances that the countries in the Americas have had, not only in the update, but also the harmonization and implementation of their policies and national plans for risk management, compliant with the Sendai framework. Likewise, we expect to encourage a dialogue to generate proposals and actions to facilitate this connection of this instrument of policies and implementations, and why not to take advantage of to achieve the result of the substantial risk of disaster risk and the losses they bring, both in livelihoods, health, and others, as well as economic, physical, social, cultural, and environmental goods. The companies, communities, institutions, civil society, academia, and in general the countries in the Americas hereby represented have made efforts to comply to one of the 7 goals established. This is the only goal, the national plan strategies, which is to be complied by 2020. Public policies, strategies, and national plans, in essence, expose these principles, objectives, topics, and guidelines of a state in a specific area. So these instruments that prioritize the needs of the population. Without a policy or a national plan or a national strategy, there cannot be governance, since they should exist as a set of guidelines to be translated strategies to improve the quality of life of the population. This is where we find the importance of national policies and national plans. This session will be developed through 4 phases or 4 questions. Review and see what we're going to be discussing in this session. There are 4 phases of questions. The first of them will be answered by all the panelists, guided to the support of the national experiences to support the harmonization of these national frameworks with the Sendai framework. So our panelists will have 5 minutes and will be very strict with time. So please take that into consideration. The second question is, which have been the main innovations and changes in these national policies and plans to articulate with the Sendai framework? This question will be directed to the panelists representing Costa Rica, Colombia, and Argentina in that sequence, having 5 minutes to answer. The third question is, what recommendations can you share about this harmonization and strengthening process of policies to reinforce the multi-sector work and ensure the sense of this interinstitutional relation as established in the Sendai framework? This third question is directed to the panelists representing Mexico and Riadis. For that, they will have 5 minutes. And the last question, which are the needs and recommendations after acknowledging these advances that we can recommend so that we can ensure that these efforts of the strengthening of risk governance is translated into positive changes and support to all the sectors and population in general. This question will be answered by all the panelists. We have on screen the timer, and on my right, if given the case, they're going to be announcing the timing of each intervention. By the end of each intervention, we're going to have a Q&A session. We're going to take questions from the audience so that panelists can answer. For this purpose, we will ask you that by the end of the session, whoever wishes to ask a question identifies yourself. We're going to pass the microphone around. So please say what institution you represent and who you're asking the question to. Without further ado, we're going to start, and to answer question number 1, we will start with architect Ivan Caicedo. He is the director of the National Unit of Risk Management of Colombia, and allow me to share the experience of the speaker regarding Colombia and other operations. He is an architect of the America University in Bogota with a master's in environment from the European School of Corporations in Spain, specialist in prevention, attention, and risk reduction in the Católica University in the city of Manizales. Right now, he is the sub-director of the Risk Reduction Unit in the National Unit for Risk Management in Colombia, and he has worked as a professional in technical assistance. He's been the coordinator of the risk team in the former Ministry of Home Development, and he's being an advisor for risk management and land use planning in multiple municipalities of Colombia. So we are happy to announce your participation in this panel. Fine. Good morning, everybody. First, we want to share and tell you how Colombia has done this, and it is that our legislative framework was formulated before the Sendai framework, but we were fortunate enough, and the previous discussions in our national policy for risk reduction that was adopted April 24th, 2012, we had the discussions towards risk management, understanding that risk management is associated to development management, and that the solutions for this risk management had to come hand in hand with the discussions given in each of the sectors and elements that have to do with the development of a country. In this line of thought, we then proposed the exercises towards these management processes that, well, this brings me to the second question. We'll explain later, because this has been one of the innovations of our policies, but we also have some components, as you can see on the slide. But mainly the key of our adoption in terms of being able to harmonize, implement the Sendai framework, and being fortunate to having achieved this harmonization before the Sendai framework is the applicability of these premises, these objectives, these risk management processes and components at a territorial level. And it is not only the municipality or the town that can develop these on their own, but also at the level of different layers of the government, the state, but also at the national level, with the responsibilities according to the capabilities we have at each of these government levels. This is with regards to the territories. In terms of the sector, it also implies the support of the sectors at the different levels of government. In each town and municipality, we have this home sector, but we have the potable water sector, infrastructure sector, the agricultural sector, health, education, and so on, which also support this development of the town and municipality. But in addition to that, it also generates the possibilities for risk management added to the territorial responsibilities previously mentioned. And the third scope of application is from the institutions, how to work towards new rules, new regulations, new provisions from each of the institutions that are at the service of promoting this development, so that we can work towards the fulfillment of the objectives that you see on the slide, the objectives of the national system for risk reduction. I think this is one of the most important aspects in order to be able, or as you have observed in the different presentations that have presented the national system of risk reduction. And we also have a common language, because when we speak about risk management, we have different levels of knowledge, different types of know-hows in our country. We have different types of populations. We have indigenous, we have peasants, we have Afro-Colombian, and in order to reach out to each of these communities with different levels of quote-unquote development, we're going to have, or we needed, a common language, a universal language, and this allows us to apply risk management in this specific territorial scopes, but also with a common language towards the goals that I will expand on later with regards to the processes of risk management. Know the risk, reduce the risk, and manage disasters that are, of course, aligned to the Sendai framework. This implies altogether that the policies become a social process, of course, linked to development, as I said initially. And what we want to do here is to solve a problem, including public, private, and community, so that we can solve and sort out those conflicts, so that we can manage all the disaster issue. Thank you very much to the architect, and now we continue to answer this first question. We have Mr. Emilio Lujan. Mr. Lujan, since December 2015, works as the Civil Protection Secretary of Ministry of Safety and Security in Argentina, and also the Executive Secretary of the National System for Risk Management. He is a retired colonel of the Argentinian Army, achieving the Chief of Staff and professional in strategy and organization of war school. Since 2004 until 2013, he was the chief of a civil defense area of the Chief of Staff in the Argentinian forces, and he participated in different events of natural disasters in their country and abroad, supporting the means to the victims. He's done different courses in the Department of Institutional Relations. He was director of the Research and Planning Unit in Operations of Civil Protection. So we are honored to have you here in this session. The floor is yours. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Fine. I'm going to, regarding the question that brings us here together, or regarding question 1, Argentina had a very important historical debt where we were never able to organize those. That was called the emergency federal system that, to be honest, never worked properly, and it was basically aimed at responding. Argentina, until a couple of years ago, had no organization at all, and we basically acquired a huge capacity of improvisation. But in October this year, we were going to be 2 years from the enactment of the law that creates the National Risk Management Unit. This has been a very important change, a very important advance in our country, because not only this law, which is a new law that was very participatory, the creation, the drafting of this law that was approved unanimously by the Congress, and it has a very marked orientation to the Sendai framework. This law creates the national system, the SINAGIR, which has a structure of organization mounted over 2 councils. The Federal Council that brings together all the provinces in Argentina. Take into account that Argentina is a federal country. This implies that all the provinces are autonomous. And as you know, in terms of civil protection, autonomy is an issue because there are a lot of wills and thinking that, that have a different thinking, and we needed to bring all these criteria to a consensus, and this is achieved through a permanent work with the provinces, and we're doing it through this Federal Council, where we discuss the public policies and agreements, and from there we are implementing all the progress. The other council is the National Council that convenes all the ministries, and they also work in the public policies for the country. This law includes a lot of aspects. I think it's very comprehensive, related to the concept of disaster risk reduction, basically, and also issues that are bringing us together, which is the inclusion in what the vulnerable sectors bring, considering gender, children, disability, and indigenous populations. The other points, so that we keep this within the time framework, we were able to draft. Last month is a year of the National Plan for Risk Reduction. This national plan at the moment is a matter of pride for us, because on the one hand it was guided by a methodology and a very important support. We were working for a whole year in the drafting with 9 multi-sector boards that intervened with all the ministries, NGOs, private sector, civil society, and we were able to launch this plan, which we put it in consideration for both councils. It was approved by both councils, by all the provinces and ministries, and as of now we are working, and this is a 5-year plan, and this deserves annual plans. We drafted 2018 and we are implementing it, and we are working on 2019, which is going to be the one that guides the budgeting in 2019 for disaster risk reduction. I have 2 seconds. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for sticking to the agenda. Now we are going to invite Mr. Carlos Picado Rolas. He is a professor in sociology, master in development projects, a doctor in philosophy. He has 26 years experience of working in the National Commission for Risk Prevention and Attention of Disasters in Costa Rica, where he has worked in different positions along this 26 years experience. Today he is the Chief of Strategic Development of the National System for Risk Management. He has worked for the national plans and also the national policy for risk management, harmonized with the Sendai framework. And he has participated and contributed to the planning regional process as the Central American policy for integrated risk management. He is professor in different masters of risk reduction in the University of Costa Rica, Central University, and the Latin American Faculty of Social Sciences, apart from the Central American Institute of Public Administration, ICAP. It's an honor to have you here. The floor is yours. I would like to start by saying that I'm not going to have enough time to say what I want to say, but what I could mention is that when we talk about the risk management policy, an important aspect that is relevant for us to express is that this policy doesn't start with the Sendai framework, and I think that for no country it starts like this. The possibility to achieve to the construction of a document that we name policy but not plan or strategies, precisely because there is a framework of... I don't know if you have a presentation here. And you can see this timeline of the recent years, where you can see the different processes that go from the legislative framework up until the moment in which, or the moment in the year 2015, we have the Sendai framework. But in this context, we have to understand that the Sendai framework does not just come come on its own, but in that same year we have the development goals and also the Agreement of Paris, with the characteristics that the same goals that were defined and established for the Sendai framework were adopted, but the development goals, the climate change framework, and next year the Habitat project also was developed. So there is a criteria concept harmonization in international policies that feed back the agenda for risk management for a country, but also as a country, we have our own definition of priorities, and within this framework is where we write the national policy for risk management, and this is oriented to help the development of a country, and it's been defined like this. This is important because if we want to achieve the development goals in this action framework for risk reduction, we have to also go towards these objectives. The main component of this policy to development is the reduction of losses from disasters and contribution to welfare. We have made an additional effort in the sense that we have pointed out an aspect that sometimes we make mistakes in the past and then we correct them, and it is that we wanted that in all sectors and institutions there were institutional plans for risk management or emergency attention. We don't do that anymore. We don't go to the sectors to find plans. We don't go to the municipalities to find risk management plans. We go to the sectors, we go to the municipalities, we go to the institutions to see that the concept of risk management is incorporated in the planning of the development that those institutions have in charge. So this, what you see on the slide, those circles that go up is a set of documents of public policies at different dimensions. One of them is in green. This is the adaptation to climate change that incorporate the risk management. There is no plan for each of these institutions for risk management. There is an adoption of the vision of risk management into their planning. This is a qualitative approach, and that has helped with innovation. And I have some other things to point out, but to stick with time, this slide, what we want to show is that this was the Millennium Goals. We were clear that there was the international framework to follow, so we designed a national plan for risk management that was in force from 2010 to 2015, and now that we have the new framework together with the development goals, we drafted a policy document that is the foundation of a plan. So the policy is designed for the same 15 years of the Sendai framework and the development goals. And the plans are 3 plans every 5 years, and these plans we developed them in 2015 as the action framework and development goals came up, and this 5-year plan is the one that we're executing right now. Thank you very much, Professor, and thank you for sticking with the agenda. Now we invite Mr. Carlos Miguel Valdez Gonzalez, General Director of the SENAPRE in Mexico. Mr. Carlos Valdez was born in the city of Mexico. He is a geophysical engineer from the Faculty of Engineering of the National University. He studied a master's and a doctorate in geophysics in the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States. And during his professional career, he has participated in jobs as a chief of the earthquake system, national system from 2005 to 2013. And February 2013, he was appointed as the general director of the SENAPRE by the Secretary of Government. Thank you very much for being with us from Mexico with your experience. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. The question is how to approach risk reduction for disasters. What could be one of the best tools, or how to start? Or where we have considered that's important, it's through having a national atlas of risk reduction. This multi-sector, multidisciplinary atlas is a tool that allows the government, federal government, to work determining what are these risks that we are exposed to, but the information that's very useful empowers people. And being able to share this information with the authorities at the three levels of the government and decision makers and the general public, I think, is one of the strategies where we can base ourselves on. I want to go back to the presentation. We're going to see some of the images, some of the pictures of people that participated in the support after the earthquake we had September 19th. Why is this interesting? Because all these youth, younger than 32, hadn't understood. They didn't know. They didn't hear what we, the adults, were speaking about this 1985 earthquake. And it is through this earthquake, this event, where they're very clear about what we are going up against. So going back to the Atlas allows to know the risks to which we are exposed. Mexico is a huge country, 120 million inhabitants, 66 indigenous languages. So the law forces us or obliges us to transfer this knowledge into all the indigenous languages. So this becomes very complicated if we don't speak to them, if we don't make them understand what they're subject to or what they're exposed to in these communities. Is very complicated. So how to make this atlas work through its implementation, but in order to implement it, it has a cost. In this case, the federal government financed the 32 state atlas in order to have the coverage and to have the most complicated thing is the municipalities. Mexico has more than fewer than 2,500 municipalities, and the variation is impressive. In some of them, we have identified the 100 most vulnerable municipalities, representing 40% of the risk against this phenomena. So the idea is to reach out to them with the information and the phenomena they're exposed to. We have to acknowledge that in the south part of our country, the hydrological phenomena, hurricanes, cyclones are seen differently compared to the north region, where these systems are welcome because this is a desert area. So how to understand the same phenomena under different concepts. So that would have to be through one of these strategies. In this system, we can draft or think about scenarios that allow us to see in a given region towards a specific phenomena how many people live there. They're segregated by gender and age, so we can know children below 12, senior population above 65, and determine the degree of vulnerability. We can see the number of homes, number of health centers that are exposed in these areas, the schools, the banks, petrol stations, and if we rate them with a cost, we are able to know how much it would cost us not to do anything. And this is one of the powerful tools, because when we speak to someone and we tell them, if you don't do anything and you don't take care of this phenomena, you're going to have in your savings this many million or this much money to take care of these situations. One of the strategies is that this is a presidential mandate. We can request all the information from the different secretariats of the country, and we are able to have the information about the schools, about bridges in this system. In this system, we can log in, select an area. You see all the schools. You can just click and see the list of all the schools in the area, including the name of the principal, number of teachers, number of students, phone numbers. So this allows to create scenarios that are very real, and this gives us an idea of the capacity we would have to take care of an emergency in certain area. One of the important aspects is, in this earthquake event, is that we exposed all these fractures and bends these earthquakes caused. on September 7th and 19th. After 2 days, there was 2 million people that had access to the system. So it makes us reflect and think that people need information. We need to know. If we don't know what we are up against and what type of effects it is going to have, we won't be able to serve and work properly, but of course working towards a more preventive approach. So this is a very important and useful tool.
Thank you very much for your time. And we know that policies and plans, national policies and plans, in order for them to be truly effective, they need to consider all sectors. And in this session, there is a very important guest who will share with us from his vision how has this involvement, how has it taken place for the disabled population. And we have Otto Mazariego. He has a visual disability. He is a communication science professional. He works in the Republic of Guatemala with a broad experience in the organization movement for the disabled. He currently performs as a treasurer of the board of directors of the Latin American Network for Disabled Persons, and he is responsible for for inclusive matters regarding disaster risk management. He has been a president of the National Council for the Disabled, CONADI, the Guatemalan Association for Blind People and Disabled Persons in Guatemala. He has participated in different forums and scenarios, both national and international. He recently participated in the Ibero-American Forum in the Inclusive Approach and the Fourth Consultation Forum, the Pacific in Central America and the Sub-Central American region. And he has presented some proposals for action in public policy. And welcome, Mr. Otto. You have the floor. Thank you. Good morning. I would like to start by thanking your solidarity towards my country because of the eruption of the Fuego volcano, which was an unfortunate disaster that left many consequences behind. As part of this network of support for the disabled, we consider that the inclusion of a disabled person is key in action plans regarding the comprehensive risk and management of disasters. We believe that the collective advancement that we have reached has already been stated on paper. And the greatest inclusion tool that we have is the sendai framework, where disabled people are included not as beneficiaries, but as a sector, because the disabled have a lot to support or contribute from our experience in terms of the comprehensive actions around disaster risk management. Within this regulatory frameworks, we also have the Disabled Rights Convention. Article 5 speaks about the non-discrimination and equality that we have in order to be included in all of the spheres of the political and social life in our country. Also, in Article 11 addresses the risks and disasters and humanitarian aid, and this enables us to have an instrument to be included in all types of initiatives. The Paris Agreement is also another tool that benefits us, as well as the humanitarian agenda. And the participation in the DACA Declaration, where we recently had the chance of participating, and it invites governments to create actions for the fulfillment of the Sendai framework mandate. And this must be done through reporting, implementation, and monitoring. Also, in the Central American region, we have been able to become engaged in policies for disaster risk management, and we have achieved some progress in terms of inclusion of disabled population, which was not possible in the past. But the most important part of my experience in my country and the Central American region is a project that we are working with ASB from Germany and the Latin American Network for the Disabled and related organizations in the region, and we have managed to evoke interest around this and for people to get informed around this comprehensive management of the disabled population. Also, the ruling organizations have shown themselves keen about holding dialogues and showing respect for people with disabilities. As proof of this is the signing of the agreement between the National Council, CONADI, of Guatemala and the National Coordinator of Disaster Risk Reduction, CONRED, for its acronym in Spanish. And this institutional agreement will enable us to influence national plans around inclusion of people with disability, as well as the new national comprehensive risk management policies and the new SINAGIR. Speaking about experiences regarding leaders from associations and organizations of disabled persons has been very important, because the ruling bodies have enabled us to reach them so as to inform them and train them regarding the rights of people with disabilities and their inclusion in comprehensive risk management. Also, we have generated training sessions including methodological instruments that have enabled us to train community leaders, teachers, and authorities in terms of comprehensive risk management and the minimum rules around age and disability, and the educational guide for primary and secondary school teachers. But we are aiming at the implementation of the community guide because we believe that through leaders, community leaders, we will be able to truly affect, or have an influence and make sure that disabled people may also be part of actions for intended to address disasters. I would also like to mention that it is very satisfactory for us to know that, or to make sure that disabled persons are able to be part of decision-making spaces, as the Sendai framework states that we must be or become acquainted with disasters and the vulnerable groups affected by disasters. And this includes disabled people who, through many barriers, have not had access to this mitigation and preparation and emergency response plans for the comprehensive management of risk, disaster risk. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your proposals and your answers, Mr. Otto Mazariegos. And in order to continue our session, we will give room for our second question, precisely about those innovations and changes, as it has been mentioned in the different countries that have enabled this harmonization and articulation process, and taking supplementary actions amongst the countries. So this question will be answered by Costa Rica, Colombia, and Argentina. You have 5 minutes, and we will start with Argentina or Costa Rica. Costa Rica. Costa Rica. Very well. As considered by the policy in which are relevant to mention, this part of the policy includes principles. And on the left hand side, you can find those that are that speak about resilience, transformation, adaptation, innovation. The ones in white are the ones we are used to since recent years, but we noticed that there was a lack of a theoretical framework that could organize these concepts from a perspective of innovation. Innovation should not only be about technology that I can build in, but also what innovation can I find in terms of concepts. These words should not be left out in the void, but should have a meaning. So I would like to mention the concept of social inclusion, because with the previous presentation, you can find the need for this incorporation, but policies in general planning and so on. Nowadays, there is an important element. There should be an access that could aim at governance. How are we going to build in these actors or stakeholders into the fulfillment of a policy? In the Sendai framework, it has been stated that risk management is not only a responsibility of the states, but of many stakeholders, specifically the private sector. So it's not only about beneficiaries, but all of the political actors that should be change agents and actions and institutions. Every policy should have a governance chapter aimed at changing responsibilities and commitments. When we speak about the change in attitudes, undoubtedly the concept of knowledge and learning is key. So these principles are there, they have been stated. I won't take or just drill into this a lot, but about indicators, we have a problem with Sendai. When we speak about the indicators as a function of commitments or results that want to be measured, one would have expected that actions or priority actions would address the indicators and results expected and stated by Sendai. But if you take a closer look, there's no direct relation between actions and the expected results. So the expected results are reducing mortality and human effects in terms of losses and damage. But the action items do not respond to this. So this led precisely to trying to identify each one of the actions based on the expected results. I cannot stop to define each one of them, but if you take a look at the policy, you may find that there is a relation between expected result and what is stated. But those are actually articulated to the expected outcome, and this is because of Sendai, because this framework makes these things evident. So this was something that I can state it as an innovation element. It's a lesson learned that we must incorporate into our documents. From the standpoint of the different approaches, the different scopes, we can also find that when it comes to working in indicators, sendai is not enough for the structuring of these indicators. We must innovate in the construction of these indicators, and we are specifically deciding, we have our management indicators set out in our national plan, and this must be compared to impacts in order to determine whether this attempt is actually addressing human affectation, economic losses, and in general, are we reducing risk? So this is stated in the indicator structure that we want to measure. Thank you. Argentina.
Bien, en este punto.
In this point.
Bien, si bien
even if fundamental innovation aspects mentioned before include having a national system and a plan, this national system and through its legislation has led to adopting different types of actions that are work programs developed by the country. One of these programs is the Risk Maps program. We have developed a methodology for risks maps, including a handbook. We used to have some guides, but we could not find a methodological manual for risk maps. And an adaptation for this planning that we have in Argentina. We have adapted the civil protection, and this manual, this handbook, may be downloaded. It's free. It's in the Argentinian security website. And based on this methodology, we have started working on workshops, and the objective for this year is to find 100 cities with their risk maps. We have 14 provinces that have committed, and we actually have 403 cities, so we expect to surpass this goal by the end of this year, by far. We consider one of the big problems that we used to have when we were in different cities was the lack of planning, where oftentimes, because of a lack of knowledge, we couldn't know how to make a plan. So when you start to see the different aspects a plan must comprise, the first step is identifying the problem. What is the problem that I have in my place? This identification of a problem is the risk map. I must be able to have a proper methodology for risk maps looking at the problem I have, and based on this, being able to start or to complete the following steps towards the solution of these problems, and I must know what the work mechanisms are. So we're working in this direction. This is well, these are the provinces that have taken on the commitment. We have carried out preparation workshops, or training workshops in different cities with the commitment of the intendants, and we are expecting to surpass this goal for this year. Another topic that is very close to this one is that of resilient cities. In this regard, and having coordinated this with the UNISDR, and along with the other representatives fostering resilient cities from the United Nations, as a country we have intended to develop a program to expand the 10 key work points set out by United Nations, and this is close to risk maps. Once cities that advance in their risk maps continue with the Resilient Cities program in a work methodology where we are working with white hats and all the provinces, or cascos blancos, and all the provinces that they are involved are undergoing an awareness raising session. This is done by cascos blancos, white hats, who are working on this, on managing this kind of work, and finally a fundamental aspect, which is financing in order to make this possible. These are aspects that we've deemed convenient to present. They have been launched already, and we are keen about them in the civil protection in Argentina. Thank you. Thank you. And finally, in order to complete the second part of this session, let's give the floor to Colombia. Very well. Going back to the answer to the first question regarding the application we have in Colombia for disaster risk management, where it's a responsibility of all the authorities and inhabitants of the Colombian territory as a function of the territory, sectors, and institutions. The key innovations of national disaster risk management starts from moving from emergency management and disaster management, because risk management is tackled or starts as a function of development management, meaning social, environmental, economic development of the country. So the key elements that we included as a function, as an innovation function, in order to determine a national system, because we came from a territorial hierarchy order for disaster management. We passed on to a system where other objectives are generated, everything that we contribute from rules, regulations, instruments, plans, programs, everything that's done in the country in order to solve a problem, and in this case related to risk, would have to do when it's regulated for risk management processes, where we initially have a characterization, prioritization, analysis, monitoring, the world of early warning systems, communication, and so on. But with this input, we would like to feed the next process, which is risk reduction, where we want to plan not for the answer, because this will take place later on, but in this case, to plan as a function of development, plan in a prospective manner, and anticipate. We have a huge dimensioning of plans for land zoning, public investment, but also for environmental matters and cultural patrimony, social development, health, education, and so on. So all this was generated as a function of being able to articulate and incorporate risk management into implanted instruments, but we need to generate an instrument that could organize the discussion later on. I will speak about these plans at different levels and sectors, but also not only to anticipate to new risk mitigation mechanisms, but also to correct or mitigate risk. And another important element is financial protection, assurance or insurance of public goods, but also interval goods. In Colombia, we have advanced and collective assurance in some cities where all the municipality and the city, everything is insured against different phenomena that could create loss and damage. And in disaster management, we can highlight the preparation for emergency response that we have or that we know from, we have inherited from the previous system. And all of this may be developed through the components of the system. We have an organizational organization for risk control. Well, all authorities come together and within their own skills and scopes, they are able to solve in a horizontal manner, so to speak, those matters regarding disaster risk management. So we have a risk management council or councils which intend to plan based on existing elements, land zoning, basing zoning, and everything regarding this plans. We currently have a national plan for risk management, which has a 2-year validity, and 33 departments in the country have these plans, and we are around 98-99% of the municipalities. We have 1,102 municipalities with their own risk management plans, all planning around these processes. Knowledge reduction and management, but this is not done alone. It's also done as a function of financing mechanisms. We need funding for this. And one of these elements is being able to have risk management funds at different territorial levels. The national fund, then 30 out of the 32 provinces or departments, we also have some funds. And this okay, now time's up. But finally, I would like to say that information systems also include information, databases, cartography, georeferencing, also minutes, agreements, plans. None of them are organized in an information system for risk management systems. Everything is in line with the Sendai framework, and these components become the governance of our national system and national risk management policies. Thank you very much to all of the panel members for your innovative answers. And in order to continue, based on what we have done and the innovative aspects, I would ask the representative in Mexico, Andreadis, to please share with us their answers to the third question. What recommendations can you give us around this process of harmonization and coordination of instruments and around this innovative approaches? So let's begin by Mr. Otto de Readis. The third question, yes. We believe, we consider that the 3 major recommendations would be empowering the disabled and making them visible. Also, having or considering access and design, universal design. There cannot be inclusion without access, and oftentimes it is considered that access is only about building ramps for disabled people to access physical spaces, those disabled persons using a wheelchair. It goes beyond this. In order to build ramps, it is not enough to have good intentions. The Universal Design Manual specifies, it includes technical specifications that determine what is the angle for the ramp, as well as the measurements and rest areas. And at the end of a ramp, in order for a person to turn around without any problems, there should be a 150 square centimeters space, just to give you an example. But access also refers to creating the conditions for disabled people to freely displace or to move freely in private and public buildings. It is useless to have a ramp and an access ramp if bathrooms do not comply with the specifications. According to the manual, doors should be 90 centimeters wide for disabled persons to be able to access, as well as bars where to lean or support bars. Also, the visually impaired should have signals as tactile guides or signs and in Braille language. And these people also need signs and information, written information, in order to just move around freely. So I repeat myself, without access, inclusion is not possible. And this is one of the biggest or the major recommendations. And also, it is very important to have records, because the Sendai framework speaks about segregating data by age, gender, and disability. But if we fail to have information, general information in our countries, we won't be able to carry out this data organization or this data breakdown. We need community leaders to be able to carry out these records of disabled people in their communities. In the Fuego volcano incident, we learned that we failed to have records of the affected people. So it was detected that there were 135 disabled people in this place, but we do not have a record of missing people or of fatalities because of a lack of data. We are also promoting access and shelters and inclusive shelters, because not only do we need ramps, we need all the conditions, all the necessary conditions for disabled people to have a dignified life and to be considered in terms of their needs. And these are the reasonable adjustments when we speak about accessibility or access. We speak about a universal access. It should be for everyone, but reasonable adjustments are just in line with the needs of every person with a disability. Thank you.
What recommendations can we share? First, that all public policies are aligned with the National Risk Atlas. And regarding the Atlas, we need to know all the phenomena. Sometimes we commonly think about earthquakes, volcanoes. We have an area that's highly affected by hydrometeorological phenomena, but we have anthropic phenomena, for instance, the presence of human beings. We leave them at the end, or we don't even consider them, and other phenomena where Mexico has studied the part of the impact of phenomena of the outer space or for instance, meteorites, and we speak about this because the impact in the area of Chichiru in the Yucatan Peninsula 65 million years ago is considered that massive impact that terminates dinosaurs. There's something we don't want to face in actuality, but they're common things that we can see. How long could we just stand outside with this sunny day, all this sun radiation and explosions? That's in the law, but we need regulation. Why that sun or solar explosions are important? Because we all have these little devices. So telecoms become highly vulnerable towards these solar explosions. So knowing the impact that this phenomenon could have allowed the countries to set proper guidelines that can help them work more preventively. The other important aspect is highly dense inhabited countries, 120 inhabitants, so social organizational phenomena. I don't know if you know what the world recommendation about how many people should be in a square meter. Does anyone have a number? If we see it here, please allow me. You are marked, these squares where people with disability can sit. This is about a square meter. So if we ask Julian, please stand up. It is 3 people. If we increase, please, 4 people, could you please come here? 5 people, this is a situation that is complicated. We see it here. If we had an event, are we allowed or do we know how to get out of this situation? Thank you very much for your help. We need to know then this other phenomena, and we have to add them and make them common. We left this in 1985, and in Mexico last year we commented this in another meeting. The earthquake replicates 2 hours later after having a national drill. Some people participated, others didn't. But 2 hours after the drill, we had a real test. So we thought, nature is so wise that if we don't learn the lesson, nature repeats it. And nature did it in the same day, September 19th. So, and reacting, and again, why the Atlas? Because these are the scenarios. These scenarios are the ones that allow us to propose how we can act. Atlas allows us to analyze multiple scenarios at the same time. We think that phenomena happens separately, but in a month we had like 7 phenomena, and we had Harvey. Harvey, the hurricane, crosses the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico without any impacts, and then it enters United States in Houston, and it generates all this damage and loss. Mexico didn't have a big affectation, and then after that 2 earthquakes. So the combination of this phenomena is something that we don't do regularly. We can see this. Imagine a powerful earthquake in a period where hurricanes also hit. So we're going to have mudslides and so on, so floods. So we have to know this and adapt to it and analyze characteristics of this social organizational phenomena too. With this, I'm done with my intervention. Thank you very much for your opinions and recommendations. They're important. And to conclude with this session, we are going to now jump to the question that has a 3-minute time frame. We're short of time now, but please give us a final message about the needs. What can we do to secure those efforts for a strengthening of institutions and application of national policies? So let's start here on my left. And finally, we're going to end with Mr. Otto so we can then play a video clip for the audience. We proposed, or we have a few challenges from the national system with these application scopes, the components of a system that enables us to have opportunities and options to manage the issue called risk. At a territory level, we have a change of government, change of administration. In the upcoming months, we're going to have a new president. We have a new national national development plan, so we have to adapt our disaster risk reduction plan to the national plan, but we have to consolidate the exercise to articulate municipal and state plans to this national plan of risk management 2015-2025. Likewise, to strengthen the financing scheme, because we have the funds at a national, state, municipal level with good results, but we still need to generate or incentivize these local state efforts towards the funding and financing of a system and other associative schemes from the public and private sector, and also at the community level. Regarding the sectors, we have some challenges as well. We have been always working, or most of the time, working with natural disasters, technological, social phenomena, sanitation, but in terms of the anthropic events like the Hidroituango Dam, with this exercise last year allowed us to put public and private in the same scale to analyze risk, but we have to continue to reinforce this integration, this articulation among the different planning instruments. So they have to agree on the knowledge, risk reduction, disaster management, but also to dynamize the incorporation of risk management in public investment. This is an issue that we're going to have to regulate as the national system so that we can make each sector, development, roads, infrastructure, health, education, contribute from their own investment from the previous stage of project formulation up to the execution of the projects in terms of risk management. Subsequently, institutionally consolidated social process relationship between public, private, community in terms of the governance established by the national government system, and to continue to develop complementary legal framework to facilitate management at the territories, but also the sector level. I think that I went over for 1 second. At the end, we're going to have time for questions. In Argentina, we've set a few goals, and we're going to talk about 3, 1 per minute. One is regionalization. We spoke about one of our issues for civil protection, which is the province autonomies, and to combine criteria with different wills. This we can achieve in the framework of a federal council that summons all provinces, and now we're working on a strategy that's oriented to regions and risk sharing, and also be able to work on training, education, and resource optimization. This is one of the challenges, and we're moving towards this goal. The other issue, the other topic that's also crucial is everything we do with the civil society and the private sector. Here we've made progress as well, specifically about a list of NGOs, that work with civil associations regarding emergencies. We have associations that provide huge support during emergencies and some others that could become a real issue. So we're articulating in such a way that those associations and NGOs that enroll in this list are inside the scope of the needs that the national system has. We are also working with the private sector, and we've made progress in the different type of agreements with chambers of companies or business chambers, so we can do a common work in this sector that had never been involved. The other challenge is articulation with the scientific and technological network. We have created two networks. One network that's called the Technology Scientific Network for Risk Reduction Management, and the other one is for climate change adaptation. Both networks respond to the needs of the national system in terms of the requirements and needs, and it summons more than 30 scientific bodies, all of them with the capacity to provide different types of supports. We have had different requirements from the secretariat point of view, and this network has been working on this. We have 13 protocols that have come from this scientific and technological network. So I think this is a challenge to bring all these scientists together to work on the same direction. Regarding recommendations, I think that the best recommendation I could point out is that I pretty much agree with my Colombian colleague. This is about the capability and the problem we have. I think this is not just an issue of this problem. We commit with a whole bunch, then we don't have the financial capability to approach them. So we have to incorporate the concept of the financial strategy in terms of losses, that generates problems. I think that's important to then generate the investment from the public sector. And finally, there is a very important element in this concept, and it is that we generate the commitments at the plan level. Things that when we speak about theory of what we have to do, everybody agrees. When we go down to consultation to determine what is it that we're going to do, and then commitments are taken, we are not so much in agreement. So it happens that this institution has to do this, and in the consultation process, what we have to see is what commitment we're going to assume. And when we finally achieve that, it turns out that we have to get that to the political level so that the big boss approves, so that they agree that that's going to be the commitment of the institution. That is called, in this public policy documents, the chapter that has to do with the evaluation and monitoring of these commitments adopted. Once they're adopted, someone has to make sure that they are being complied with. Sometimes we neglect the drafting of this document and the generation of this specific chapter stating how we're going to enforce that. Something that happens in my country when we adopt this document, we say we're going to create a political and a technical commission. Political decides, the technical brings information input so that they can make decisions. And after that, those two structures disappear. We have to work a lot in the generation at the legislative framework for the monitoring of these policies. And finally, it is necessary that we create some type of instrument. Here I'm presenting an instrument that we have. But we normally monitor the actors and players about the performance and what they're doing, and then a report that shows how they're complying and enforcing their commitments and make it public. Possibly we don't have a sanction capacity, but when we make it public, the whoever is responsible is going to feel warned and obliged to complete their commitment, and that's what we're doing. we are doing this monitoring follow-up system with a report that is presented once a year to the National Forum of Risk Management, and see how that has helped, because what I have next to it on your right is the report, management report, that takes that information as part of the reference documents to know how we are operating as institutions. Thank you. How to take the best recommendations and the best practices? One of them would be, as Emilio said, the academic, scientific sides have to be together and combined with the social. Sometimes we forget about that, and technologically we can solve many things. A brief example is in Mexico we have a seismic alert system more than 20 years old, and in 20 years the evolution went back and forth, and then we complained, and then last year we had these real tests and how we could finally understand that the operation of an alert in the end saves lives. And we had even the discussion that if the voice and the pitch of the voice of a person saying seismic alert, so we were discussing if we had to change that voice. After the discussion, we said that we should not change it because people that got stressed is because they didn't have the capability to understand and react. More towards the preventive side, what to do and what we should do before the alert. The alert should just indicate that it's time to sit down in a chair or something, because we've done all the preventive work. We know that the structure is going to take it. We know that socially we are going to be okay. So how to get to that point? On the other side, we have the exchange of good practices. All these alert systems and what Mexico has been doing in order to have a more accepted alert system. We are in a regional platform. We see as Mexico a country with so many municipalities and states. We have to exchange the information. Phenomena are common, and we have said that they don't obey boundaries. We have to know that the impact that the phenomena could have in Central America, it could go through Mexico, continue to the north part. So these type of meetings help to good practices. And the other thing is to understand and listen people with different capabilities. Otto is saying this very well. Also, I would tell you that the ramp should have like 30 degrees of inclination, and I have the impression that that's too much. That is too much, and we don't consider that. We don't understand. Sometimes we don't speak to people. We have to listen. They have to tell us how we have to take care of an emergency from the point of view as people with different capacities do it. If we don't put ourselves in those shoes, we won't be able to take care of the emergency, but more in preventive terms, so that everyone understands that working preventively will allow us to avoid to get to emergencies and disasters. There's no powerful country in this world that could finance all disasters. Resources will not be enough. We've seen big countries like Japan, the United States. What we want is to set the example on how Latin America, Mesoamerica, and Central America. Thank you. Mr. Otto, we're going to start with the presentation of a video. Just to get you out of this academic activity so that this video can be used as a base to finish with the recommendations that we have as people with disabilities for risk management.
por una gestión de riesgos ante desastres, inclusiva y sin
Management
barreras.
that's inclusive and without barriers. Inclusion saves lives. This video is part of the campaign that we are doing in Central America. ACP from Germany and Riyadh's Inclusion Saves Lives. And this is what we've been discussing today, and how people with disability are included in all the actions of the integrated risk management. So these help us reduce casualties or affectations of people with disability towards anthropic and natural disasters. Also, it would seem like fiction, but in real life, it has had a close relation with testimonials that we have had from people with disability that have experienced a natural disaster. Under this light, we would like to leave 3 recommendations. First is that we continue to have the dialogue with people with disability and the ruling entities, so that we can be strategic allies with the institutions that have to do with risk management, so that we have a more direct participation as the Sendai framework dictates. The other recommendation is that it is time to finish with this assistentialism, meaning that people with disabilities could be actors and players of our own decisions, and we have the capability to decide towards any situation in life, so that we are not seen as people that are just helped or assisted or beneficiaries regarding risk management. Sendai framework is very clear, and we should be protagonists. We should have a very important role in all this decision-making process. And the other recommendation has to do with the proper use of term. And it is that sometimes we fear that a person is blind. How many times have we seen a situation that where we want to be introduced, and then they're ashamed of saying that Otto is blind? They start just looking for like least pitiful terms, like they just make us like everlasting, a little blind person, of little people with disabilities. So terminology is very important. The convention talks about deficiencies in people, and they're classified in deficiencies as sensorial disabilities. This is deaf and blind, the physical deficiencies, and intellectual deficiencies. But the environment around us has barriers, architectonic, cultural, and communication barriers. So interrelation of a deficiency with the barriers gives us a condition of being a person with disability. In this sense, I believe that academia should play a very important role in the training and education of teachers and students, because through the academia we can generate conditions towards all the population with regards to the proper way to treat people with disability. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Otto. We want to thank you. We want to thank our panelists. It's been a very productive session, very valuable, with recommendations that bring us to action and make us want to work together. Please, a round of applause for panelists. But for the sake of time, we are sorry we're not going to have questions and answers, but please take note of this email, and through myself, I'm going to have them answered back to you so that we can continue our discussion. Thank you very much. My email is jsolano@cepredenac.org. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Y retomamos esta transmisión especial vía streaming de la sexta plataforma regional para la reducción del riesgo de desastres. Acaba de concluir la paralela número 7 y haremos una pausa hasta las 2 de la tarde para retomar con la plenaria número 3 en el Salón Getsemaní. Gracias a todos por su sintonía y los esperamos a las 2 de la tarde.